Hello and welcome to Wisdom and Productivity, the podcast of Dr. Efrain Martinez. I am a principal in search of wisdom, and I have found productivity to be a great tool for success. Today, I have the great and distinguished honor of having with me Amanda Suckow, who is a queer and non-binary musician, artist, and educator with over 20 years of experience. They support arts educators in Chicago Public Schools, the third largest school district in the U.S., serving over 340,000 students across 600 schools. Specifically, Amanda designs, delivers, and evaluates professional learning for hundreds of arts teachers using data-driven and learner-centered approaches. Amanda Suckow, who are you?
Well, you said all the most important details, and I'll admit that it is a little surprising to hear it out loud. Thank you so much for having me this morning. I've been really looking forward to this. Who am I? I am the child of Roy and Vera Suckow. My dad, Roy, spent his entire life in school, graduated with a bachelor's degree in chemistry in the fall of 1999, and passed away graduated in the spring and passed away the fall of 99. So he literally spent his entire life, kind of like you, in search of knowledge, always trying to grow and be curious. And I think that's a huge thing that I take with me. And my mom really is just one of the most emotive people, sensitive people, caring people, worked multiple jobs growing up. And that ambition and that sensitivity also makes me who I am. So I think to tell you who I am is to tell you who my parents are. As you said, I'm a queer, trans, non-binary musician and educator and multidisciplinary artist generally. So again, so happy to be here.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Amanda, what got you into the artist and musician world? What got you there?
Well, I mean, I always thought that I was going to go into arts education. When I was 5 years old, we made these posters all about me, and I still have mine. Um, and one of the things it said was, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I had pictures of paints, and I said I wanted to be an art teacher. And that really was the case until middle school, when my my middle school art teacher told me I was annoying. And I didn't take any more
Ooh,
art classes after that. But I did shift my focus to music education. And I think there's kind of two paths to who I am professionally. There's like the creative aspect, and then there's like the educator aspect. And I don't know that those two things had ever been more merged than when I was in undergraduate school, teaching privately, playing in the symphony, Midland Symphony in Midland, Michigan. Shout out to my people there. Um, and they kind of diverged a bit when I started teaching in school. Found it difficult to maintain the creative practice while, teaching hundreds of young people every day. But I'm finding my way back to that. So I kind of taught in maybe a few different settings. I actually worked for you, in case you don't
yes.
remember. Just kidding. And I wore this shirt today because I bought it right before I started at Orozco, where we worked together. And I bought it for that job. And so I thought there's the best shirt to wear for this interview today.
That's awesome. I always remember you because I think schools should look like the students, and you were the first openly queer educator I ever hired in my life. And as you know, Orozco is in a community that, for some things, tends to be very conservative. And I was so glad that I took that decision because you were such a compliment for our students, and everybody just loved you for the way you are.
Yeah, I mean, the kids there are just wonderful. And actually, I mean, probably one of the most involved family communities as well. So it was a wonderful experience. I felt a lot of love there.
Beautiful. So, for the audience of the show, walk us through your professional trajectory
Mhm.
up to this point.
Yeah, I started my career right out of school teaching privately. I maintained a full private violin viola studio. Um, Earned my bachelor's degree in music education from Central Michigan University, where I focused on string pedagogy, planned to teach orchestra. You know, that was the dream. Um, and when I finished school, I just found that I wasn't really quite ready for life, you know, for paying for everything. And my mom, she drove from Milwaukee to Michigan where I was living in her minivan and picked up all my things. And I lived in her basement for a little while. And I think that's just really important to mention because um, it's really humility is one of my core values, but it took a long time to get there. And I think we always must remember how fragile everything is. You know what I mean? And so I got my first teaching job in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I was teaching at a small private Catholic school for 5 years. Worked with some really exceptional teachers. Right now, there's folks that I worked with that are now college professors, and just amazing amount of talent and care and passion in that school. Um, After 5 years, I had the opportunity to go to Hawaii for 6 months, so I left that job, and it was one of the scariest things that I've ever done. But it's important to mention because I think sometimes we're afraid to leave one situation to go for another. And I really was leaving one situation and going to no professional opportunity. So it was a big risk. When I came back, I didn't go straight back into teaching in schools. I taught adjunct for a little while at Milwaukee Area Technical College, and then was teaching privately as well, and cleaning instruments in the basement workshop of White House of Music in Waukesha, Wisconsin. But then I headed back into the classroom because, as you know, we just keep getting called back. And I taught for Milwaukee Sign Language School for Milwaukee Public Schools. And then I moved to Chicago, which is when you and I met. My partner at the time was working in Chicago, and we thought, let's just make it easier and move to Chicago. So I went to Orozco, and there was many overlaps with where I was coming from. We had a deaf and hard of hearing program at Orozco, which was something I was really passionate about. And it was really exciting to like work with two visual arts teachers, like really dedicated phys ed staff. Mr. Resner, shout out. um, and then, but then I kind of realized I wanted experience with high school. And so I made the decision to go to Collins High School in North Lawndale here in Chicago. Amazing learning experience. Again, just really incredible, dedicated staff. A principal that was like, you know, got vegan bacon for me and a couple other vegetarians one day when we were doing a breakfast. So just, you know, a lot of love there. After the pandemic happened, I made this kind of like realization that I needed to step away from the classroom for a bit. There's a few reasons for it. But I left and started a job at the Department of Arts Education for Chicago Public Schools. Started out as a kind of a generic professional learning specialist, working with all artistic disciplines. And then after a year, the role was made into music content specialist. So I now provide professional learning that really is inspired by all the mistakes I've ever made. You know, I'm able to support people by all of my flumps. So
Beautiful. What would you say is needed? What do music educators need?
oh, that's, yeah, a lot of things. I think, well, first of all, music educators need equipment. It's a huge challenge in a lot of schools. And teachers that I work with, people are holding saxophones together with rubber bands and, you know, soldering things at the end of the day. And so that really is probably like one of the biggest things that people need. And I think it's difficult, especially if we think about like hierarchy of needs. It would be great to say, yes, everyone is in a position where they can dig into cognitive rigor and all of these sorts of things. And I think they can happen at the same time. But I think it's also very challenging to do that when you don't have equipment that you need.
Beautiful. Thank you. I have been following you for a while, and I have admired this sort of brand that you have created about your work. Can you tell us about that process, especially from the moment of not having one to creating one? Because I
Mm,
think there's many of us that want to showcase our work, our art,
yeah.
but imposter syndrome attacks us, or we think, it's
Yeah.
not good enough. Who's going to care?
Yeah.
Tell us about your work.
Well, I mean, there's a lot that I don't reveal. And yeah, I'll get to your question, I promise. Um, but I think, what comes up when you word the question that way is like what I'm not sharing, um, and why I don't. Um, and I would say that a lot of my personal creative and artistic practice I don't share. And I think a big part of it is that, I'm sometimes afraid that people won't understand it, they won't appreciate it, or worse, that like it just won't even be viewed or listened to. So there's, that kind of that fear, and I don't share those things because of it. But what I do share is, I think, my kind of more educational practice, less of that creative and more of that educational. And I think that if I looked back 5 years ago, I wouldn't share things the way that I do. So I think what inspires me and helps me overcome that imposter syndrome is really thinking about what I knew when I was in the classroom and thinking about what I needed. When I left the classroom, I kind of made a vow to myself that said, Amanda, you need to be the person that you needed when you were in the classroom. And, it was very embarrassing for me in a lot of ways that I didn't understand really the music education standards. That wasn't something that was really covered when I was in school. And I think that a lot of professors approached the standards the same way that I did, which is find an activity that I enjoyed maybe as a student and then find a standard to apply to it later on. And I really didn't understand how to unpack it. Um, so I hear oftentimes teachers kind of telling me like that same process and not really seeing the value in that backwards design. But because I have learned since then and I have seen the benefit of it and the profound difference that it makes to understand at the beginning what we want students to know and understand at the end, um, I really work to bring that to the folks that I work with. And so that's a bit of what I try to share. Some on LinkedIn, but also just generally in my work, is just remembering what I needed and knowing that not everybody needs it, but those who do are going to find their way to me and the content that I'm putting out. I think that with imposter syndrome, sometimes it's like easy to lean into perfectionism. Like I need to meet everybody's need. I need to cover all the ground. And really we can release that idea that we need to be everything to everybody and really identify who it is that I'm here to serve.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. One more follow-up question. I
Mhm.
saw that you earned this very impressive MBA. Tell us how that has impacted your work.
Mm. Yeah, I participated last year in a program called the Global Leaders Institute, and when I started, it was a certificate program, but they had recently been accredited, I think in Brussels, of all places. So um, I learned about the program through this woman that I used to work with, Kelly, who works for El Sistema Rivinia, and when the more I learned about it, the more I wanted to engage. And I think it's important to talk about how I got into it, to talk about what it's kind of done for me. Because to kind of speak to imposter syndrome, when I got in, I thought, wow, they must just let everybody in. They must be, desperate for people or something. And when I looked at the roster of the people that were in the program with me that had been admitted, there's about 60 people from 38 different countries, and many of them had PhDs, doctorates of musical arts. People were professors, arts administrators, teachers, like just really, really accomplished, amazing people, published people. And I realized, wow, like again, that kind of humble core value, was humbled to be among these folks. So really, it was a program that allowed me to look introspectively. We had what was called a change project, and we met with people and like what is keeping us from achieving our dreams? What is kind of holding us back? And it was a pretty intense evaluation of ourselves. There was a lot of group work. That was a huge learning experience for me because I'm very kind of independent person at my core. It's actually kind of funny. I found this paper that I had written in middle school, and it said something like, I wrote, "I don't like group work. You just can't count on anybody else to do their part." And when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, I have not changed. And it's not true. You can count on other people, and working with other people is a huge part of everything that I do now. So it's just kind of funny to see that, how little we change over the years. We got to engage with other organizations. There's a Sistema New Brunswick, which is the largest El Sistema program in Canada. And, we got to talk with the CEO of the organization and things like that. And I think all of those things really built my confidence to start dreaming about my own goals and my own aspirations. What more can I tell you about that question? I think I lost track of the question.
No, I think that it is very unusual that someone in the arts, in the education field where we live in, pursues an MBA, and I think it's important to stay with that a little bit, because the ramifications are tremendous, right? Because usually when you look around, many of our peers have not gone to that level. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think schools really are business organizations. We don't like to think about them like that, but they really are. And understanding how to find solutions for the challenges that we face daily in the education system is really important. And I think, that would be kind of that final piece that I took away.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Amanda, looking back to the future, if you could go back at any point of your professional trajectory, what will the Amanda of today tell the Amanda of back then?
So many things, but I could probably go back to any point in my life, any point, and this would be relevant, which is be curious and be humble. I have not operated most of my life with these values. There's been a lot of time in my life where I couldn't receive feedback. I couldn't acknowledge what I was hearing because I was so defensive. And, I think there's probably various reasons for that, but I think musicians tend to be perfectionists. We tend to want to just have it right, and there's just this one right way to do it. And I think if I could have leaned into the curiosity and humility that I'm working to cultivate now, I would be so much further ahead. And I think that it's all about healing yourself emotionally. And sometimes I regret or resent that I wasn't able to do that earlier, but I think that we all come to things at the time that we're able to. And I'm grateful that I can be self-reflective in this period of my life.
That is a very wise reflection. Many people have lived all their lives not being able to acknowledge things like that, and I think that is a very good examples for the listeners and audience of the show. So let's talk about the books. The books are this amazing source
Yeah.
of of wisdom and entertainment. If you have to gift two books, one
Mhm.
fiction and one non-fiction, to a loved one, what which books will those be?
Yeah, that is a really great question. I am not a big fiction reader. I just have always had this kind of idea that like fiction is for enjoyment, and if I'm going to do that, I should watch a television show. So it probably makes no sense, but that's where I've been coming from. But I would say the closest to fiction that I get are memoirs and stories. So I pulled aside this book in preparation for today. It's not a hard book to read. It's Disability Visibility: 21st Person Stories from the 21st Century. It's edited by Alice Wong, who coincidentally my mom and I engage in a book club every Sunday morning. So we're
Ooh.
reading Alice Wong's memoir, Year of the Tiger. So one of the things that's special about this book is not just that you have stories from from all of these different folks, but really we all face the potential for disability in our life, and it's something that has always been kind of like a bad word in my mind, to talk about disability. But in reading this book, at the time that I read it, I was able to see myself in a lot of stories. I think stories have the power to bring us closer together, to see each other's humanity. And I think this book is a really good introduction to some of the various stories that people with disabilities have. So definitely recommend. And the other book that I wanted to share, the nonfiction book, is called Inside the Box: A Proven System of Creativity for Breakthrough Results by Drew Boyd and Jacob Goldenberg. And this is what it looks like for anyone who is curious. And this book was recommended to me by one of my instructors through the Global Leaders Institute, Bartek Skadowski, who does some of the strategic problem solving that I've become very interested in his everyday work. He works with Fortune 500 companies, and I just, work on myself and my friends, and, we come up with our solutions. But, maybe at some point. So this book really digs into the methodology of how we can challenge ourselves to think about things differently. Oftentimes we say, think outside the box to come up with solutions. And it's kind of a play on those words to say inside the box, because I think that creativity, the greatest creativity that we can come up with, happens when we have limitations. And so what is inside our box that we can work with to come up with solutions for this challenging situation that we're facing? So it talks about some different techniques that are great to practice and good to do it with a mentor as well. Like I had the good fortune to learn these techniques in Italy last year, and actually engage with local folks in Fivizzano, Italy, who are business owners, and work to create a program based on the tools that were introduced in this book.
What's your experience in Italy?
Oh my gosh. What part? I mean, what part of my
Well,
experience?
the
Just
first question I always ask people is, what was the best thing you ate when you went to Italy?
there were these sun-dried tomatoes in this salad at this cafe. Oh my goodness, the sun-dried tomatoes were so good. They were still a little like moist, right? Um, and this the flavor, there was like tang, sweetness. Mwah, so good.
Beautiful. So, working is so such a different culture. Like, how do you maneuver um that particular experience in Italy?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, yes, it's different, but also the people that I was there with, my cohort is about half of our cohort that went, we're all coming from various different cultures as well. So, we had one person coming from the Philippines, a couple people from the States, and then people from all over Europe. So it was
Mm.
really just,
Really global then.
yeah,
Oh,
it really
I,
was.
I forgot that
So
factor.
yeah, and I would say probably one of the most surprising things, or like things that are new to me, is the commitment to tradition, especially in a small town like Fivizzano. So the folks were so kind, so welcoming, so brilliant, just like the wonderful ideas that they had. But one of the big challenges was the commitment to tradition, the way things that have been. And when you're talking about a culture that, has been around for so long, um, and then trying to introduce new ideas into a traditional environment. But if you're thinking about working with what you already have, like inside the box, when you have deep tradition, there's a lot to work with. So I would say
Beautiful.
that's probably the biggest thing. But we stayed in this. It was like a former monastery that had been kind of converted. So it was like beautiful stone walls and floors, and you could go up to the rooftop. I took a time lapse video of the sun rising one morning. There were castles around. So it was just really, really gorgeous.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. Amanda, who is or who are your biggest influences?
So many, so many. You, of course, you're one of them. I mean, you're doing this, right? You're doing this podcast. You're a parent. And even just, when we spoke, and I hope it's okay that I share a little of your methodology here,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
but you told me that you do this at 7 in the morning so that you can spend the day with your family. And that is an influence, right? What are our priorities, and how do we make sure that we can explore our own curiosities while supporting and nourishing the relationships that are important to us. So but I would also say my mom. We have found this way to each other, as a 40-year-old adult, that I didn't expect. Our relationship was not easy. We have book club every Sunday morning. We just like spend the first 30 minutes catching up on our week. We read a couple essays, and then talk a little bit longer, and then wrap it up and see you next week. And I think one of the things that really has helped me is seeing the way that she refuses to talk about people negatively in the family. And that was not always the case, right? But she just won't. She wants to keep things positive and keep things kind. And that's something that I aspire to in all areas of my life. It just doesn't serve to complain. I mean, sometimes it serves a little bit, right? But we can't stay there too long. So definitely my mom. And the other people that really influence me are probably like all the music teachers that I work with, because they influence what I read, what I realize I need to learn. Sometimes they influence how much sleep I get at night. So, they're a huge, huge part of who I am. I get to work with everybody at kind of like different levels. Definitely my manager. My manager, Lillian Blazer at work.
Yeah, Lillian.
She is so human focused. I've learned so much from the way that she seeks out what people's assets are and helps to shape the job and the work around people's assets and interests. And I just hope that when I'm in that kind of role, that I can be as much that way as possible. So yeah, Lillian, love you.
Beautiful. Yes, bravo.
I'd
Beautiful.
also add in my manager, my partner, who is not my
Tell me.
manager, um,
Sometimes, right?
really not. She's so generous. She's this amazing scholar and professor, and creative person as well. And I oftentimes think, am I bringing all that I can to this amazing partnership that I've been so lucky to be part of? And I think one of the ways that she influences me most is, as you know, when you create something and you submit it and you submit it and you submit it and you get all of these rejections, it's very hard. And people don't go on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram and talk about their rejections.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I wish we could more, in a way, but it doesn't really happen. And so I see my partner, she's putting these things out, and she gets a lot of like yeses, but she gets many more no's. And seeing the way that she responds in that kind of rejection, that she just keeps going, keeps writing, keeps doing her thing, is a huge influence on me because, I'm, probably just a little bit more susceptible to the no than her. So, many more people too, I'm sure, but those are the folks that kind of come to mind immediately.
Awesome. Lovely. Thank you so much. Let's take a very quick, brief pause to praise the Teach Better community.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. Now let's get back to the episode.
All right,
So,
teach better.
Yes, teach better. So let's talk, Amanda, about the productivity side of things. As you know, this means different things for different people. And many of us have these awesome ideas. We read the best books. We have all this wisdom, but we cannot get organized and our art cannot come into fruition. So tell us about what productivity means to you.
Happy to. I've listened to a number of your podcasts, and so I wanted to try to provide some responses that might be a little bit different than the ones that you've received already. One of the things which is common is appointment slots. I have wasted so much time, going back and forth with people about what works for you. I just set up these appointment slots and I say, set up a time that works for you. And if there isn't one, please let me know a couple times that would. And it saves a lot of time. One that might be a little less common is my use of AI in reviewing my emails. So I don't do a lot of AI writing messages for me, but what I do like to use it for is, like, let's say I'm writing a message or an email that is maybe a little sensitive, or I'm not really sure if I'm using the right tone. I'll paste it into ChatGPT and I'll say, please let me know, like, read this and let me know, like, what underlying tone is here or possible misconceptions that people might have. And a lot of times it will give me, something that I haven't really like thought about and can help me kind of adjust it a little bit. Or sometimes, I'll say, we write these biweekly updates for the CEDO in Chicago Public Schools. And so I'll go in and I'll say, I'm help me make this a little bit more clear and concise for my boss's 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 boss. My life depends on it. And, it will just help me kind of refine things or just make sure that it's coming across in the right tone. So those are a couple things that I do. I have a few creative projects that I work on. And actually my friend Helen and I have been talking about creating our own podcast. And it actually started out where I was kind of trying to work on it on my own and was feeling very stunted. Just, I think probably some of that imposter syndrome, like, all of these things. I actually initially, tiny divergence, planned to make a YouTube channel. And I decided that what was really holding me up was this fear of having my face everywhere and being open to negative comments, and just kind of like hateful things. So I decided let's switch this to an audio podcast, where I'm a little less exposed and can maybe protect my emotional health a little bit. So, but I was still just kind of like, okay, I need to like revamp this. So I reached out to my friend Helen and I said, hey, you want to work on this project with me? I have no money for you. And she was definitely in. I sold her on the no money. And but the thing is I think productivity can happen sometimes in partnership. When we're feeling like we're alone, it's only our ideas. It's kind of can kind of stunt you, or me rather. And also having someone that you're accountable to. Okay, so we made these goals last time, and even if I didn't completely finish my goal, I have someone that I'm going to report to. And I think those things are really valuable to productivity. I know that a lot of times, folks kind of imagine this idea of going out on your own, and having your own business, or solopreneurship. But I think that would be challenging in a lot of ways, at least for someone like me, without some kind of outside accountability. So I think those are some of the things that I thought of that might be a little bit different than some of the other responses that you've gotten.
Absolutely innovative. Nobody has responded like that. I love the use of AI to summarize or give you the content of the main important things in the emails,
Yeah, feedback
and
tool.
also that you use AI as a thinking partner, of
Mm.
like, is this coming across the way? Because we can all get canceled by the wrong thing, expressing the wrong
Yeah.
email or coming too
Yeah.
rough, or absolutely, especially in when everything can be foilable.
Yes.
Let me ask you, when you think about to-do lists or ideas, or you organize projects, how does that look like behind the scenes? What should we know?
Oh, well, I love this app called Milanote. Are you familiar with it?
No, Mila notes.
Mila Note. So this actually, I became aware of this when I was working on some creative project with Roger Ellis, who is a dance and movement professor at Northwestern. And they had this approach to planning that I had just never really experienced before, and it really worked for me. So I've been using this app in a lot of other projects, both for work and personally. And so Milanote allows you to like kind of like bring your add all of your links in. You can create notes. You can put videos in there. It's interactive. So it's kind of like Jamboard meets Canva, although not as visually nice as Canva. Meets whatever like organization system you have. You can create these boards, and that's really been great for me. You can create working agreements in there. I at my PL team retreat for that I work with at the Department of Arts Ed, we do these summits 3 times a year, and we're using these learning conditions to inform the summits and what the learning is going to be. And so I had everybody on our team create kind of mood boards, asking questions like, what do you want to read in the exit surveys at the end of this summit? And just kind of like visualizing that, and like including pictures, and like, whose ideas are you bringing in to this? So so we all made these vision boards using it, but you can also use it just for like kind of every level of planning.
Beautiful. Are you, to capture your ideas, are you a app user? Do you write down your things? You have post-its? How do you capture your thoughts and ideas?
A lot of different places. I have 2 notebooks. One notebook that I call my thinking book, and another book that I call my feelings book.
Ooh.
And sometimes they overlap, right? But I try not to like leave my feelings book laying out and about. So I've got those things. I do use sticky notes. I have this little printer that connects to my phone, like through Bluetooth. Sometimes I'll put something and type it out, and then I can stick it right into one of my books. There's I love pen to paper. I think it's spiritual to do pen to paper, but I probably do a lot more in my daily work of just working on the computer. So I'll have sometimes like personal docs that I'll use for like my initial thinking. And as quickly as I'm able to, I'll transfer them over to our shared documents at work, so that other people can contribute. The problem with spending too much time on like my facing of these documents is that I can become protective over the ideas, and I don't want to let them evolve. So the earlier I can let people in, the better. But yeah, I mean, those are some of the tools that I use.
Beautiful. Amanda, when you take up the hat of all your professional endeavors, what do you do for fun?
Well, we live really close to the lake. And so one of my favorite things to do is I'll say to my partner, or she'll say to me, like, time to go for a walk. And I guess her dad said to them when they were kids, push on your shoes. And so, if I say it to her, sometimes I'll say that, push on your shoes, Danielle. And, we'll go for walks. If it's warm enough, go ahead and go up to the knees in the water. I'm so fortunate to live so close. And I also really love board games. It's very like meditative. There's a couple like I like to play online on this website called boardgamearena.com. But I also have like some cute like physical ones, and we're actually going to a friend's house this evening to play some board games. I think there'll be a show up of the game Wingspan, where you're building nests with different birds. So I don't know. I just find it to be relaxing and a nice way to connect with people. Especially if you're just, if you're a little like me, where, sometimes peopling can be tiring. And I really get my energy from my alone time. So it's a really great way to people for me. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And, interesting question. I am new to the beard world. This is my third beard. So I'm highly curious. I'm here admiring your beard. Can you tell us your journey with beards? Because I think I've seen 100% of the videos in YouTube. I have bought magazines. What have you learned about the beard world? Tell us about your journey.
Well, I trimmed it down this week. But it was quite long. I think the last time we spoke. So sorry to say it's not in its full glory right now. So, I actually have had facial hair since I was a teenager. And it was actually a huge source of kind of shame for me. But when the pandemic happened, I thought to myself, 2 weeks, I'll never have 2 weeks again where I don't have to report anywhere and no one will see me, right? We'll be back to work in 2 weeks. So I thought, I'm going to stop shaving this and just see what it looks like. And I loved it. I was like, this really feels like me. So I embraced it, and we had some virtual classes instead of returning back into person. And it was funny because some of the young gentlemen in my classes, they would say like, Suckow, how'd you get your beard? And I'm like, I just stopped shaving. And one of the kids said, oh man, I was hoping you could give me some tips. So it's it kind of how it came about. That's where it came. I've learned a lot about taking care of it. And recently I've started blow drying it when it's longer. Like right now I don't need to blow dry it. But blow drying is really a great technique. So I'll put in, my mom actually got me this year for Christmas a beard care system. That was a little bit different than I had been using, and I really like it. It's got like tea tree oil, and it's just like, it's got the serum that you can rub into your face afterwards. And I just feel like, so titillating, I guess. But Yeah, I think the blow drying with a round brush and just kind of doing that makes it very floofy. Yeah, exactly. And it just looks really nice when I've done that. So, but every once in a while I'll be like, it's time to start over and I'll trim it down. So that's what happened here. But give me a couple weeks and we'll be back to where we were.
Back to Rumble. Thank you so much. This has
What
been such
about
a
you?
great. Oh, for me, let me tell
Yeah,
you.
sorry, I
So
gotta
I'm,
know.
I'm
What's your
quite.
tip?
So I always thought I couldn't grow a beard because it was all patchy and stuff like
Mm,
that. And one this past Christmas, I said, okay, I'm not gonna shave for a whole month, and let's see
mm,
where it takes me. And I surprised myself,
same. Yeah.
like mid 40s. I'm like growing a beard for the first time. I have never been to a barber to actually get it fixed, so I have made all these mistakes of the
Mm,
balance and stuff like that. But
mhm,
YouTube has been a university. So the blow
mhm.
dryer, when it was longer, I had this brush that you connected, you plug it in, and it's hot. And I have the
Oh,
oil, and I have the balm, and I had
oh,
the mustache wax and shaving
yes.
on top of the Adam's apple. I mean, it's such a fascinating thing. And
Yes.
and my family at the beginning was, it's gonna look ugly, it's gonna look ugly. And then one day
Oh,
I shave it, and they're like, no, what the heck are you doing? Put the beard back. So it's like, I don't think I'm going back. It's just something that I always admire from afar, and I
yeah,
thought that it will never happen to me. And just like you,
yeah,
it just, you start seeing this glorious thing, and you're like,
yeah.
wow, I love it. So quite fascinating. Every time I meet someone with a beard, I say, we have to talk about beers, because
Yes, absolutely.
it's like a thing that nobody talks about, but it's such a fascinating topic.
Yeah, it's almost like a culture, really.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And when you walk and you see someone with a beer and they have a beer too, you look at each other like, yeah, you're in the club. Right, right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Or you admire someone with a mustache. It's a different way of looking at people. It's like
yeah.
I don't know. It's like a badge of honor to have
Mhm.
to have a beer. That's my thought. When you see a awesome mustache or
Yeah,
something like that, is amazing.
I love that. You're so right. I didn't realize it, but it is. It's like, I see you. Yeah,
And you see me, even if you don't say a word, but
yeah,
that
yeah,
we connected. You know. So
exactly.
awesome. This has been such a great moment with you, Amanda. Any last comments for the viewers and listeners of the show?
Um, I I thank you just for having me on. This has been really joyful for me. I admit I was a bit nervous. And so to the viewers, if Ephraim comes to you and says, hey, I'm sorry, Dr. Martinez, let me
Oh,
get it right
Efrain,
here.
for you.
Say yes sometimes when something feels a little scary. And, thank you for listening, watching, and yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Amanda. I hope that you have a fantastic weekend with your family, playing those board games, and have a blast.
Yes. Thank you. You too. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to Wisdom and Productivity, the podcast of Dr. Efrain Martinez.
Chulu.
And I love that production. Chill out.